The message came in at exactly 3:20 p.m. on Monday. A hotel reservation confirmation, sent from the internal company email system. The sender, Kelsey Monroe, my husband's executive assistant. The subject line was cold and matter-of-fact. Reservation confirmed. Coastal Pearl Resort, Ocean View Suite, Premium Wine Package. I sat frozen in front of the screen. My fingers instinctively gripped the edge of the desk. It wasn't that I hadn't suspected something before, it was that I hadn't expected it to be this brazen. A luxury suite, a king-size bed, 2 weekend nights at one of the most upscale resorts on the West Coast. The problem was, I wasn't invited. My husband, Eric, had never mentioned any trip. No business conference, no client meeting. But I had seen this unraveling piece by piece, like tiny cracks before the whole glacier shattered. Over the past 6 months, Eric had started working late more often. He'd changed the passcode on his phone and started leaving it face down whenever I entered the room. Some nights I heard him whispering in his home office, only to shift instantly to a casual tone when I approached. Not long ago, I accidentally picked up his phone from the kitchen counter. He snatched it back from me without a word. I'm no cybersecurity expert, but I know enough to recognize when I'm being lied to. We had been together for 14 years, building our tech consulting firm from nothing in the garage behind our first house. I handled strategy, structure, and foundation. He was the public face, pitching, signing deals, inspiring teams. People called us the perfect duo, and for a long time I believed that too. Until I started noticing how often Kelsey Monroe appeared on Eric's schedule in lunch receipts marked client entertaining, and in late-night calls that didn't show up on the official logs. That afternoon, when I walked into the boardroom, Eric was already seated at the head of the table, his tie slightly loosened, hair perfectly styled. Beside him, Kelsey was taking notes, her fingers gliding lightly across her tablet screen. She looked up at me, just once, and the look she gave was enough to chill me. There was no more doubt. "Apologies, I had a few calls to wrap up," I said, settling into the chair across from them. My voice was steady, polished, the kind I'd trained for years. "I'm Grace Donovan, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Donovan Technologies. I don't show weakness, especially not now." The meeting went on as scheduled. We discussed our client project in Palo Alto, quarterly growth projections. But in my mind, every glance, every touch between Eric and Kelsey played out like a scene on a giant screen. The way their eyes lingered, the slight brush of her hand against his when passing documents. That evening, Eric sat across from me at dinner, pouring wine like nothing had changed. "I have to fly to Portland this weekend," he said, not looking up. "Reynolds Group wants a private discussion about the security package." I set my glass down. "Portland? You're leaving on Friday?" "Yeah, they want to meet early." "I thought Reynolds was putting that project on hold." He looked up just for a moment. "There's been a shift. Big opportunity." He lied without hesitation, smooth, practiced. I gave a faint smile and took a sip of red wine. "Sounds great. Good luck." That night I couldn't sleep. I turned my back to him in bed, my chest tight like 100 needles pricking from within. 4 years ago, I went through a failed fertility procedure alone, while Eric was supposedly at a conference in Seattle. Now I wasn't even sure he'd been there at all. The next morning, as I pulled back the bedroom curtains, I saw Eric loading his golf clubs into the trunk, preparing for a business trip, with clients I knew for a fact didn't play golf. I clenched my fists. This wouldn't pass like all the times before. Back at my office, morning light filtered through the glass wall behind me, casting the reflection of a woman quietly containing fire. On my laptop screen, the internal company inbox, I typed, each keystroke cutting like glass. "Rachel, I need Kelsey Monroe's complete personnel file. Urgent." Rachel, our HR director, was one of the few people left I still trusted. Less than 30 minutes later, I received the PDF attachment. One detail made my heart stop. Emergency contact. Name, Ryan Maddox. Occupation, Senior Data Analyst, Donovan Technologies. Relationship, fiancé. I froze. Ryan was our best technical mind, quiet, brilliant, the one who had optimized our entire internal security system. I had no idea he and Kelsey were engaged. Even more staggering, Kelsey, who was using company funds to sneak away with my husband, was about to marry another senior member of our team. That night I headed to the 5th floor where Ryan usually stayed late coding. The room was quiet aside from the soft clacking of keys. He was hunched over 3 monitors, all streaming complex lines of code. Ryan. He looked up, startled to see me. One of the co-founders, standing there. Ms. Grace, is everything okay? I nodded slightly. I have a special project. I think you're the best fit for it. His eyes lit up. It'd be an honor. What's the project? I'd like you to represent the tech division in a strategic client meeting this weekend, I said, glancing at the framed photo on his desk. Him and Kelsey smiling brightly beneath fall leaves. He hesitated. Kelsey and I have plans with her family in Napa this weekend. I kept my tone light. I'm sure she'll understand when she knows this could elevate your career. He paused, uncertain, but didn't say no. That same night I began crafting something bigger. A critical meeting scheduled exactly where Eric would be spending his secret getaway. I sent emails to 6 key board members, scheduling an emergency strategy session at Seaside Ember Resort in Cambria, the exact same place Eric and Kelsey would be from Friday through Sunday. The subject line read, Security Audit and Internal Power Restructuring Review. For those who had already suspected Eric, I knew that just one word from me, and they'd be on a flight. I also contacted the company's legal counsel and internal finance team. I needed documentation. Every receipt, every company card swipe used for entertaining female clients in the past 2 years. At the same time, I opened my personal laptop and accessed the internal camera system in the administrative wing. There were clips I needed. Kelsey's glances at Eric when she thought no one was looking. The moment she adjusted his tie after a meeting. Small things. But when pieced together, they became undeniable signs of a long-running deception. By Thursday afternoon, once every board member had confirmed attendance and I'd secured Ryan's presence at the hotel by Saturday morning, I booked my own room, 1 floor above Eric and Kelsey, a corner suite with a wide balcony overlooking the ocean, and the entrance to the luxury wing they'd be arriving at. I coordinated everything remotely, prepared the large screen for the conference room, sent passwords to the tech support team, created a secure access list for each attending board member. Every detail was timed to the minute. That evening, I stood in my dressing room, eyeing the carefully arranged clothes. I reached for the burgundy sheath dress, vintage cut, which I hadn't worn in years, not because it didn't fit, but because I'd stopped believing I deserved to feel powerful in it. Only one thought ran through my mind. If they were bold enough to stage a secret performance, I would choose the stage and pull the curtain myself. I arrived in Cambria on Friday morning, a full day ahead of Eric and Kelsey. From my suite on the 6th floor, I looked down at the grand lobby of Seaside Ember Resort, where chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, and each arriving guest was greeted with a practiced smile. I didn't need their itinerary. I knew Eric's habits too well. Check in before 3 p.m., request a bottle of Pinot Noir to the room, and spend the first hour watching the ocean with someone seated too close. My travel camera sat ready on the table, long-range lens mounted to capture every detail, from lingering looks to careless, intimate touches. When they arrived, I stepped behind the curtain, watching through the viewfinder like I was forced to sit through a poorly written movie. Kelsey stepped out of the car first. Flowing floral dress, softly curled hair, and a look that made no effort to hide. Eric followed, pulling his suitcase and golf clubs, his free hand resting on her waist as they giggled their way inside. I clicked the shutter, each frame freezing not just the moment, but the audacity. That night I sat in a dim corner of the lobby bar, just far enough to watch table 4, the one Eric always picked when entertaining female clients. They sat there, ordered grilled tuna and a bottle of red wine imported from Oregon. He still chose the kind I used to like. I documented every receipt they signed, asking the front desk to send me copies via email, under the pretense of expense verification. The more I gathered, the clearer the truth became, not just about him, but about what he'd been hiding from me and from the company. Back in my room that night, I logged into Donovan Technologies' finance portal. I reviewed past expenditures labeled under partner engagement, Dozens of strange transactions over the past 2 years. Hotel bookings, flights, fine dining. All disguised as prospect development costs. But what hit me hardest wasn't the money. It was the timing. The day I lost our first child. Eric had said he was stranded in Phoenix due to a canceled flight. But in the records I found a charge on our company card. Used at a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara. A double room. Spa package. No conference in sight. While I lay in a hospital room under fluorescent lights, the man I called my husband was somewhere else. With someone else. I pulled the blanket over myself, gripping the computer mouse like I could crush the pain that had solidified inside me. The next morning Ryan arrived at the hotel right on schedule, still in his usual plain suit but with eyes bloodshot. I greeted him with a curt nod and led him to my room. "What's going on, Miss Grace?" he asked as the door closed behind us. "Why are we here? What client?" I laid the folder of photos on the table. By the third image Ryan just stood there, motionless, as if his body forgot how to react. We picked a wedding date. This September." His voice sounded like it belonged to someone detached from the present. "She said it was just a networking event, seeing old friends." I placed a hand on the file. "Ryan, I need your help. Not just for me, but to end this properly. Eric is quietly working to push me out of the company. I have proof he's falsifying documents, creating side accounts, and preparing legal papers to sever control." "He's actually doing that?" Ryan asked, voice low, face hardening. "Does Kelsey know?" "I'm not sure, but I know this. Eric bought a new engagement ring in Beverly Hills 2 weeks ago. Tiffany & Co. on the statement. It's labeled as gift for VIP client." Ryan leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. "So she didn't just cheat on me. She helped him commit fraud." I met his eyes. "I need access to files Eric is hiding. You designed the security system. I need you to legally retrieve what's encrypted in his executive folder. We co-run the company, and you have a right to report risk." Ryan exhaled. "When do we start?" "Tonight. Before the board meeting tomorrow morning." He tightened the strap on his bag. "All right. If he thinks we're pawns, it's time to remind him the board doesn't belong to him anymore." 10 a.m. on Saturday, Ryan and I stood outside room 408 where Eric and Kelsey were staying. We didn't knock. Just stood there in silence. Behind the soundproofed wood I heard Eric's familiar laugh. Then Kelsey's voice. Sweeter. Artificial. Ryan lowered his head, his jaw clenched. I said nothing. "She once promised she'd never hide anything from me," he said quietly, then looked at me. "Now I understand why you wanted me here today." I held his gaze. "He may have lied to me, she may have fooled you, but today they won't escape the truth." We left just in time before anyone noticed. The official meeting was set for 11 a.m. in the second-floor conference room, where I'd asked the tech team to set up a large screen and secure Wi-Fi. Every file, every photo, every document had been encrypted and preloaded, ready to present. By 10:30 the board members began to arrive. Some shook hands, others nodded silently. Everyone wore the same uneasy expression. Only Joan Whitaker, our in-house attorney and longtime board member, patted my shoulder as she passed by. "I'm here, for you." At exactly 11 a.m., I stepped to the head of the long walnut conference table, my hands resting gently on the edge. "Thank you all for being here today," I began calmly. "I'd like to present several serious concerns regarding our company's executive structure and internal ethics." Less than a minute in, the door opened. Eric walked in, adjusting his collar with a professional smile that now looked painfully forced. Behind him, Kelsey froze the moment she saw Ryan seated at the end of the table. Her face paled, but Eric noticed nothing. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing around the room. "Who said there was a system breach?" I held his gaze. There was no breach. This is an emergency meeting authorized per protocol regarding active misconduct inside the company. Eric hesitated, but before he could respond, I pressed the remote. The screen behind me lit up. Eric and Kelsey, hand in hand at the hotel reception. Entering the elevator. Dining together. Using the company card. The room fell into absolute silence. Even the wind outside the windows sounded louder than anyone's breath. These expenses, I said, switching to the next slide, were filed under Strategic Partner Engagement and charged to last quarter's marketing budget. However, cross-checking confirms these partners don't exist, and Ms. Monroe, the executive assistant, is not listed as a company affiliate in any strategic file. Eric took a step forward. Grace, you're misunderstanding. I'm not finished, I cut in, eyes fixed on him. Next is a ring purchase from Tiffany & Co., listed as a high-level client gift from last week. Coincidentally, Ms. Monroe has been wearing gloves in the office ever since, despite the warm weather. I turned to face the board. I'm not here to talk about marriage. But when personal affairs interfere with company finances, misuse corporate funds, cover up misconduct, and mislead employees, that's a serious violation. Joan opened her tablet. I've reviewed all the invoices. There's evidence Eric used his executive authority to approve questionable budgets and actively avoided internal audits for the past 3 quarters. Ryan stood up, his voice was firm. I also accessed the executive system. Inside Eric's encrypted personal folder, I found a draft proposal to restructure shareholdings aimed at lowering Grace's ownership below veto level while adding a new executive seat. The nominee, Kelsey Monroe. Murmurs broke out around the table. Eric tried to laugh, his voice rasping. Let's not jump to conclusions. This is Grace's personal vendetta, driven by jealousy. Jealousy? I stepped forward and tossed a printed internal email onto the table. Eric had sent it to the finance team, requesting priority disbursement of the pre-restructure compensation fund. The document bore his digital signature. This time, no one said a word. Kelsey collapsed into her chair, visibly shaken. Ryan didn't even glance at her. I move, Joan said, that the board vote immediately to revoke Eric Donovan's executive authority and suspend his CEO position pending a full financial investigation. Every hand went up, not a single abstention. Eric said nothing as the decision was read. His face had gone pale, throat moving as if he wanted to speak, but stopped when he saw the board's eyes. No one here saw him as a respected co-founder anymore. Just a man who manipulated trust and got exposed. Joan stood. As per protocol, executive authority will transfer to the remaining co-founder, Grace, until a formal vote was held to appoint a new CEO. I didn't react, not because I didn't care, but because I knew the real reckoning still waited behind that door. Security was called. When they entered, Eric turned to me, his eyes bloodshot with fury. You think this is over? He hissed. We built this company together, years of our lives. I didn't leave you when you failed, I said evenly. I didn't leave you after your first bankruptcy. I'm not destroying anything, but I will never stand by while someone else ruins what I helped build. He sneered. All this over some petty jealousy? No, Eric, over ethics, I cut in. You used company money to buy an engagement ring for someone else. You fabricated clients' faked expenses and secretly prepared divorce papers while still calling me your wife. This isn't jealousy, it's betrayal. Of trust, of the law. He started to say more, but a guard interrupted. Sir, please exit the room. All company accounts and access will be revoked within the hour. Eric looked around one last time, then walked out. Kelsey hadn't moved all meeting. Her glow was gone, replaced by panic, shame, and the dying flicker of some deluded dream. Kelsey Monroe, I said, locking eyes with her, your contract is terminated. HR will send formal notice this afternoon. And if you ever thought you were the chosen one, I hope this morning woke you up. She mumbled something no one heard. Ryan didn't even glance back. He just gathered his files and quietly stepped to my side. She once swore she'd never hide anything from me, he said quietly, then looked at me. Now I understand why you wanted me here today. I looked him straight in the eye. He could lie to me. She could deceive you. But today, neither of them escapes the truth. We left just in time, before anyone noticed. The official meeting would begin at 11 a.m. in the second-floor conference room, where I'd already asked the tech team to set up a large screen and secure Wi-Fi. Every document, every piece of evidence, Every photo was encrypted and preloaded, ready to present. By 10:30, board members began to arrive. Some shook hands, others nodded in silence. Tension was written across every face. Only Joan Whitaker, senior counsel and longtime board member, gave me a light tap on the shoulder as she passed. "I'm here for you." At exactly 11, I stepped to the head of the long walnut table, hands resting lightly on the edge. "Thank you all for being here today," I began calmly. "I'd like to present several serious concerns regarding corporate governance and internal ethics." Less than a minute later, the door opened. Eric walked in, adjusting his collar, wearing a professionalism so polished it seemed rehearsed. Behind him, Kelsey froze upon seeing Ryan at the far end of the table, her face drained of color. Eric, however, didn't sense what was coming. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing around. "Who said there was a system breach?" I kept my eyes on him. "There's no breach. This is an emergency meeting within company protocol regarding ongoing misconduct." Eric stopped mid-step. Before he could respond, I pressed the remote. Behind me, the large screen lit up. Images of Eric and Kelsey at a hotel reception, hand in hand entering an elevator, dining lavishly with the company card. The room fell into absolute silence. Even the wind outside the window was louder than the breaths inside. "These charges," I said, flipping to another slide, "were filed under Strategic Partner Entertainment and drawn from last quarter's marketing budget. However, cross-checking confirms these partners never existed. And Ms. Monroe, executive assistant, is clearly not listed under any official client account." Eric stepped forward. "Grace, you're misunderstanding." "I'm not done." I cut him off, my eyes locked. "Next, we have the purchase of a Tiffany & Co. engagement ring coded as a senior partner gift last week. Coincidentally, Kelsey's been wearing gloves all day in the office despite the warm weather." I turned to the board. "I'm not here to discuss marriage. But when personal behavior affects company finances, when corporate cards are misused, when deception becomes policy, it's a corporate matter." Joan opened her tablet. "I've reviewed all receipts. There's evidence Eric used executive authority to approve questionable budgets while evading internal audits for the past 3 quarters. Ryan stood up, his voice was firm. "I also accessed the executive system. In Eric's encrypted personal folder, I found a draft proposal for share restructuring, intended to reduce Grace's ownership below veto power while creating a new executive seat. The nominee, Kelsey Monroe." Whispers spread across the table. Eric forced a laugh, his voice cracking. "Let's not rush to judgment. This is just Grace being jealous. Jealous?" I stepped forward coldly, tossing printed internal emails onto the table. Eric's digital signature authorizing early disbursement of severance packages ahead of restructuring. No one said a word. Kelsey collapsed into a chair, face pale. Ryan didn't look at her once. "I move," Joan said, "that the board vote immediately to revoke Eric Donovan's executive privileges and suspend his CEO role pending full financial investigation." Every hand went up, not one abstained. Eric said nothing. His face drained white. His throat moved like he wanted to argue, but he froze under the board's gaze. No one in that room saw him as a respected co-founder anymore, just a man who exploited trust to manipulate a system and got exposed. Joan stood. "Per company policy, interim executive control will be transferred to the remaining co-founder, Grace, until a new CEO is officially appointed." I didn't react, not out of indifference but because I knew the real reckoning was still behind that door. Security was called. As they entered, Eric turned to me, eyes red with fury. "You think this ends here?" he hissed. "We built this company together all those years." "I didn't leave you when you failed," I replied calmly. "I didn't leave when you went bankrupt the first time. I didn't destroy. But I won't stand by while someone else does." He scoffed. "All over petty jealousy?" "No, Eric. Over ethics," I cut him off. "You used company funds to buy an engagement ring for another woman. You faked clients' misused expenses, drafted a divorce behind my back while still calling me wife. This isn't about jealousy, it's about betrayal. Of trust and of the law." He started to speak again, but the guard interrupted. "Sir, please exit the room. All company accounts and access will be revoked within 1 hour." Eric gave one last glance around the room, then walked out. Kelsey had remained motionless all meeting, her polished look now reduced to confusion and the ruins of a delusional fantasy. "Kelsey Monroe," I said, meeting her eyes, "you are officially terminated. HR will send documentation this afternoon, and if you ever thought you were the chosen muse, I hope this morning was your wake-up call." She mumbled something no one could hear. Ryan didn't even look back. He just stood, gathered his documents, and walked toward me. "Do you still need my help with anything else?" I shook my head. "Not right now, but thank you, Ryan. You helped me keep my integrity in a room where I should have been completely alone." The meeting ended. When the last door shut behind them, I stayed in the room, gazing at the ocean through the sunlit glass wall. On the table, the glass of water remained untouched. Beside it was a folder stamped in bold, "Proposed Organizational Restructure." Black ink on white paper, but every page carried the sting of the trust I once placed in someone I thought I knew. That evening I made a call to my personal attorney, the one I'd kept on retainer but never contacted. "I'm ready to file for divorce," I said directly. "No negotiation, no reconciliation." "Any conditions for asset division?" he asked. I let out a tired smile. "I don't need anything from the past. I just want the one thing I haven't had in over a decade: control over my own life." The next morning I received the first email from our PR team. They asked me to approve the internal statement. "Eric Donovan has stepped down from his role as CEO for personal reasons. Grace Donovan will be assuming interim operations leadership." I deleted "personal reasons" and rewrote, "Eric Donovan has been removed from the CEO position following a special board session due to serious ethical misconduct and financial violations. The truth, no matter how bitter, deserves to be named." That afternoon I packed up my temporary office at the hotel. Before leaving, I paused and looked at the plaque that read, "Boardroom." No heaviness anymore, just quiet. Like a door had closed. For good. 1 year later, I stood behind the glass wall on the 31st floor, watching downtown San Jose shimmer under the golden hour of late fall. Streetlights flickered on like ribbons of amber over the busy streets. Inside Donovan Technologies, the redesigned company logo now stood tall on the black stone lobby wall. No names, just a single emblem for rebirth. 3 months ago, the board unanimously voted to officially appoint me as full CEO, with full executive control. What made me smile wasn't the title. It was a short message from someone who once doubted me. "Grace. Turns out you were the reason this company didn't collapse. Thank you for not giving up." The company didn't just survive, it soared. Revenue rose nearly 30% in 1 year. 3 major partners returned after cutting ties during the scandal. But my proudest achievement wasn't in profit charts. It was the initiative called Mentora, a mentorship program I launched for women in tech. A space where girls who once stayed silent now confidently pitched to senior executives. Where female interns no longer feel they must act like men to be respected. Last week we were honored at a National Innovation Forum for Equity-Focused Leadership. I didn't give a long speech, just one line. "We don't want privilege. We want room to grow the right way." And I had finally found that room for myself. As for Ryan and me, there was nothing flashy and nothing hidden. After everything last year, we kept in touch. At first it was technical meetings, then coffee, then walks around the lake near HQ. We both carried our scars. What mattered was, we didn't try to fix each other. We just stayed nearby as those wounds healed. Someone once asked me, "Are you two dating?" Answered, "No need to name it. Let it breathe its own rhythm." And Ryan got that, never pushed, just showed up. Today was my birthday. I'd turned 42. No party, no loud toasts. I reserved a dinner table for one at my favorite restaurant. Candlelight, white linens, and a server who remembered I liked slow-poured red wine. "Will someone be joining you, Miss Donovan?" I shook my head with a smile. "Not tonight." As the main course arrived, I reached into my small leather bag and pulled out an envelope I had written to myself 10 years ago. Back when I was 32, struggling through a fractured marriage and barely holding on, but still believing in something. The scrawled line inside read, If someday you feel left behind, remember, you never started this journey for anyone else. And you don't need a hand to keep walking. I folded the note, slipped it back into my bag, and raised my glass. Only one whisper in my heart. Thank you for not breaking. A week after my birthday, I was invited to speak at the opening of the Women Rewriting Power Forum in Palo Alto. The organizers asked me to speak on one theme: rebuilding after betrayal. I almost declined. I never saw myself as inspirational. I didn't rise from ashes into the light like a storybook heroine. I just kept walking, step by step. Sometimes exhausted, sometimes lost, but I kept walking. And maybe that was the answer. I arrived at the auditorium early, when the chairs were still empty and the lights hadn't warmed. The coordinator led me to the stage for a mic check. A single beam hit the podium, casting my silhouette across the wooden floor. I looked at my shadow. Not fragile, not hardened, just a woman. Ordinary but never small. I used to think betrayal was what broke people, I began, my voice slow and steady. But after everything I've realized, what breaks us isn't the betrayal. It's how we choose to face it. The entire auditorium fell silent. I'm not sharing my story to gain pity. I don't need an audience. I just want to say this to anyone listening right now who feels defeated. You weren't wrong for trusting, you just need to know when to stop, and this time, choose for yourself. I walked out to a round of applause, not loud but genuine. A middle-aged woman stepped forward and shook my hand, eyes rimmed with tears. I used to think I was foolish for forgiving too much. But now I know, I was just trying to hold on. Thank you for not judging people like us. I smiled and held her hand. Wanting to hold on is instinct. Knowing when to let go, that's a choice. That evening, back in my 17th floor apartment, the same one where I once curled up on the floor, unsure of where to go next, I opened the window. A cold breeze rushed in, carrying the scent of mint from the park below. On the desk sat a small ash-gray gift box. No card. Just a handwritten note in marker. Thank you for giving me a reason to still believe. I opened it. Inside was a tiny wooden model of an office chair with the words carved into it. Lead with dignity. I laughed. Someone once asked me if you could go back, would you choose differently? I didn't hesitate. No. Without that fall, I would have kept living under the illusion that love could excuse any mistake, that devotion alone could make someone stay. But now I know. My worth isn't defined by how loyal I am to someone else. It's defined by how honest I am with myself. Eric now lives in Phoenix, working at a small startup, or so I've heard. As for Kelsey, she disappeared from the tech scene. I didn't look into it further, not because I don't care, but because they're no longer part of my life. Grace's story isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's proof that resilience, courage, and self-respect can turn broken pieces into the foundation of a brighter life. In reality, we can't control how others treat us, but we can always choose how we respond. The deepest revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's living a life with grace, strength, and never needing to bow to anyone. What do you think about Grace's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about life, family, and overcoming adversity.